Download the AllStar app. Make your picks for UFC fights, challenge your friends, level up and win prizes. Link in description. Get it now.
Man, time fucking flies, man, because it's already been 11 months. I didn't even realize that. I thought you just fought like 5 months ago, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? What about you? How has time flown by for you?
The last 6 months have since I've been back training, but the first 5 months were really slow. Like complete change up in my routine. I've been training nearly twice a day, every day, for 10 years, and then you get put in a position where you can't really go in the gym at all. And when you do, it's like for 45 minutes to do rehab and that sort of stuff. So it was tough at the start, but I definitely agree. It feels like I was getting ready for the Sydney fight not that long ago. You know, you start drinking your water fight week and all the sort of stuff you have to do to make weight, and you're like, oh, this wasn't that long ago that I did this.
Yeah, it all comes back to you, right? Because you've done it like, what? I don't even know how many times.
Probably 20 times across different sports.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, with fight week, that's something that's interesting because I don't really interview fighters during fight week. So like a question that comes up is how has your fight weeks evolved since like being in the UFC to like being on the regional scene? Like, there must have been changes you've made throughout the years.
Yeah, I try and change it depending on where I am. So the further I have to travel, the further out from the fight I have to get there, because you have to recognize where your strengths and weaknesses as a person are. And I'm a really bad flyer. Like I don't like flying. My body doesn't react well to it. It takes me a couple days for a long flight. So instead of coming over here on Tuesday, like the UFC is bringing most people over, which is tomorrow, I came out on Saturday just to have that extra couple days where I haven't started water loading yet. I haven't cut my carbs and stuff down yet for the weight cut. So I can come out and sort of have a few days of training and enjoying Perth with my team without worrying about weight cutting and being straight into it. And then fight week, I'm just, the more you do it, the more you realize, like, just to take it as it comes. Like, if fight week's fight week. You let stuff's going to go wrong, stuff's going to go right. You just got to go with it. It'll be what will be, and then roll with the punches, so to speak. But I'm trying more and more so now to just keep my mind on the fight as opposed to all the other stuff going on.
Yeah, with like your weight and things like that and climate and these are all factors. Have you made anything, any change like recently, like in the recent fight camps where you were able to like dial it in better than before?
No, not really. Like since my very first fight at featherweight, my body composition has only changed a little bit, and if in that, it's probably I'm just a little bit more dense and a little bit more lean. So the weight cut is actually a little easier. Again, it's just mental fortitude. The weight cut. If you start dreading waking up on weigh-in morning and having to cut the weight on now Monday, you're gonna have a shit week. So if you just take it as it comes, take it day by day, then you're gonna be sweet. And especially if you've put the work in during the camp with your diet and your conditioning to be in the shape to do it, which, I always make the weight pretty easy.
Yeah. You go to fight weeks, UFCs, whatever. Like you hear people talking. You know what I mean? You hear things that you shouldn't repeat again because it's private. Information for certain fighters. But I'm gonna tell you something. I'm not gonna say names, but some fighters start cutting weight like what is it, 3 days before weigh-ins. And have you ever seen that? Like people do it like because the Forrest Griffin was the one who was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, no, I've seen crazy stuff. So I've seen people 3 days out from the weigh-ins running on the treadmill in the room in a sweatsuit, like fully into the cut already. And I'm like still at that point eating carbs, like small amounts of carbs and drinking plenty of water and stuff. And they might not even, like, you don't know somebody's circumstance, so they might not even be in a position where they need to do that, or they might be. You never know. But that's 3 days out. You're already dehydrating yourself to that extent. I can't imagine that it bodes well for them.
For sure. And yeah, you had Gavin Tucker set up, man, and then a few weeks back they threw in Herbert Burns.
Yeah.
What do you think of Herbert Burns, man, and what do you think of his style of fighting?
Look, he's been around for so long, like veteran. He has the couple of knee knockouts that he throws really well. I know you've seen that. Nate Landwehr, he knocked him out with that. He's got good grappling. I've been watching his tape, and we've come up with some stuff that we think we're going to be able to mitigate the wrestling stuff that he does to get it to the floor. I think I've clearly got an advantage on the feet, speed, power, and physicality. And I think if it goes into the second and third round, I'm clearly going to be the guy who's fresher then. Um, it's hard to imagine that he's had a massive change in anything that he does, being this late into his career. But we've just prepared. It wasn't a big change because Gavin, our plan was to try and avoid the wrestle and keep it on the feet as well. The only thing that changed was that Tucker was a southpaw, whereas Herbert stands orthodox for the most of the fight. But like most fights, you just got to take it as it comes. I don't over plan.
Yeah, Herbert, something that he can probably relate to you with is that he's gone through some serious injuries and had surgeries and had to come back. This is actually in his last few fights, man. Like his knees have not, sustained well throughout the years. And, you like to kick. You know what I mean? Like that's not a good combination, right?
Yeah, for sure. But again, like I think any coach worth their salt is going to have watched a little bit of my tape and gone, okay, we need to address these leg kicks. Like you have to address them early. So if I go out there thinking like, I'll just whip up these leg kicks again that I'm good at and try and force that instead of letting them come to me, I'm sure, that'll put me in some hot water. So just going to go out and get behind the jab, keep my weight low, defend the takedowns and go from there.
All right. Let's rewind back to the arm injury. You mentioned it earlier about the months after that last fight where you were just kind of, in a place where you're familiar with. Like, how was the recovery, man? Were there hurdles throughout those months or was it pretty smooth for you?
Yeah, so it was the initial consultation with the surgeon was great because the UFC were fantastic as well. They put me in the best surgeons, the best doctors, the best care I could have had. And I went to a fairly well-known surgeon in Melbourne. And when I sat down, I had to go see him like a couple of weeks after the injury once the swelling had gone down a little bit. And when I sat down, he had reviewed the tape and watched the injury. And then he'd read the report from the MRI. And when I sat down and he was doing all his testing on it, he goes, I can't believe that your arm is in the shape it's in, given how bad this injury was 2 weeks ago. So that was good feedback to get, and he put me on the path sort of from there. And it was like a very, very good, like quick recovery. And then I got back to a point where I was training probably at like 80, 90%. And then I was going up to Wollongong to train with the freestyle boys for a bit. And like literally I was leaving Wednesday night. The Wednesday morning session just got put in an awkward spot and it just kind of clicked on me. And that was that was like more than 6 months ago. And that kind of set me back a couple of months. But again, it just working through and getting back. And then honestly, the last probably like 5 months, I haven't even thought about it in one training session. It's a complete non-issue.
Yeah, sometimes like it becomes stronger than it was before. Of course it was strong, but like they say that does happen.
Yeah, well, that's what the surgeon said. He goes, look, shoulders are common that if they go, you rehab them, they'll go again. He goes, your elbow, the re-injury rate is super low, which is, if you're me and you're just at the start of the UFC career, that's a really, really good thing to hear.
Yeah, for sure. And how did you keep yourself busy, man? Like you said, like you're just doing rehab and, what were you doing? You were working on side projects, side missions?
Yeah, I was doing a bit of stuff with horse racing, and I love my horse racing, so I was doing a lot of that. Bought a horse, and he's a weapon, which is good. And then I was still in the gym, like I was still going into the gym to try and like offer my help where I could and train around the injury when I could. And then it was just still trying to maintain some semblance of routine.
And with your team, has it changed any, or is there new faces in your team, or what's going on with this training camp?
So like I've got like people are. It's a little transient at the moment with like people having different stuff on, which is what happens when you get to a high level. You have like different needs and stuff that don't always align exactly. Like for example, Khan. Oh, it's not a secret anymore that he's in the Ultimate Fighter finale, and he was my main training partner for a long time, or one of them. And he's been prepping he was obviously overseas in Vegas for the show, and then he's been doing his prep in Bali. So we weren't able to get together like we would have liked and get our training in. And then a couple of our training partners went over to help him. But in saying that, I think we managed it really well to make sure I got the rounds I needed over here with the people that I needed to get rounds in over here. And yeah, it's all worked out really well. I don't think I've had a fight camp where I've been more put together and more structured than this one. Because we had such a long lead in, the UFC said, look, we want you to wait. Because originally we said we wanted to come back end of March, April. And the UFC said, look, we'd rather if you waited and do the August card in Perth. And I kind of thought about it, and I thought, coming off an injury, a long lead-in probably isn't the worst thing. So instead of doing 1 8-week camp, we broke it up into 3 6-week blocks with a weekend off in between. So we did like a first 6-week block, and then I had a weekend off, and I went to Tasmania for the weekend. And then we did a second 6 weeks, and that weekend off I just stayed at home and hung out with some friends. And then this last 6 weeks, we've been really locked in, and I've never been able to put the volume of training through my body that I have this time before. I kind of usually get to that last few weeks and you're like, all right, I've got to get the sessions that are must hits, but I might drop these ones because the body's starting to, get a bit lethargic, or I might have some niggles and stuff. Whereas I think doing that longer lead in has allowed me to just pump the volume through the body and be in really good shape.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think that could that actually help you mentally as well? You know what I mean? Doing those blocks like that, because some guys, they just kind of like train and then they're like, oh, I gotta fight now. I'm gonna go into this 8-week, 10-week, 12-week. Sometimes they're doing like 16 weeks. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like and mentally, like I think I've done really long camps in the past, and sometimes you just get to the end, and the last 3 weeks is such a battle to just keep the momentum that you're kind of limping over the line. And I really didn't want to be in a point where I was limping over the line. So it's kind of, good coaching and good planning isn't just pushing all the time. It's knowing when to pull back and having the ability to go, all right, this weekend, let's pull back. Just go chill out for a bit so you come back fresh. And when we get to fight week, you're smashing through the line instead of just, I'm at fight week now. Thank God that's over. I'm excited to be here, which is, a good perspective to have.
Yeah, man. And, it's very rare that a fighter gets to fight in the same city twice for the UFC. It's very rare. Barely. And you're doing it early on in your career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 from 4. It's crazy. And Perth is an unbelievable fight city. Like the vibe and buzz getting around Perth during a big pay-per-view card is unmatched.
Why is that? Because it's in the middle. Like people say, it's in the middle of nowhere. It's like on the opposite side of the world, basically, for you guys.
Yeah, it's like a destination event now. Is because everyone knows how good Perth is for UFC. The stadium is fantastic. The government's done an unbelievable job building that stadium. People are coming from the East Coast now just because they know it's going to be a great weekend, and they know the city's going to be pumping, the fights are going to be good, the UFC is going to be in town. The rugby's on Saturday night as well. So it's like a destination weekend.
Yeah, man. They've created seriously a vibe where the UFC is now just kind of going there, because you want Melbourne and Sydney, you want those major cities, right?
Sydney sucks. Sydney's such a shit joint. Ask any of the other fighters. The stadium's like an hour outside of the town. You have to get on a bus for an hour to the weigh-ins and then an hour back. Even let's say I wasn't fighting. Let's say I was with my mates and we were going to it as an event. It's so far out of town, and then if you want to go back to a pub, you got to go in town. Whereas Melbourne and Perth, the stadiums are right in the city, so it's you're on top of it. So yeah, miss me with Sydney, but Perth and Melbourne, yeah, 100%.
What's your expectations, man, coming out, in Perth again? And, there was a lot of expectations in your UFC debut as well. So it just adds on to that. And you're coming off the injury and everything. So what do you want to do?
Look, I would be unhappy with anything less than getting back and adding more of the momentum I had before the injury. I'm not interested in going out there and just putting on a performance that's okay. That was good to get back in the win column. It's no, the performance has to get me back to where I was before the last fight, and then put some on top of that for me to be happy. So it's and then I've prepared with that in mind, and you got to take risks. You can't just get through. That it's not a sport where you can just do enough. You've got to go big. You've got to go hard, and that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if you just do enough, the guy that you're fighting is gonna do more than you, right? He will take that extra step.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, a couple topics, man. The first topic was like there's a 12-0 prospect, right? Undefeated in the UFC, and they don't re-sign him. Like, what does that say about the sport right now? You know what I mean? Or is it just? Do you think it's just isolated? I'm talking about Muhammad.
I think that's
Mokaev.
completely isolated. Look, I don't know Muhammad, never met him, don't know anything about him. But at the end of the day, this isn't a federation; it's a company. And if you're not like any other, it doesn't matter how good your performance is, if you're not adding value to the company that outstrips the value you take away by the other shit you do, they're going to get rid of you. And obviously, all the stuff that's gone on, and then the way he dealt with things by the scene, the UFC didn't like that. The UFC aren't known for being, charitable towards stuff like that at the best of times. So, I can only speak from personal experience, right? Like, I don't know what anyone else has gone through, but all of my dealings with the UFC up until now have been what you would expect from a company that's main goal is to make profit, and you're dealing with them. They've been very helpful with the injury, very good. I signed a second contract. They put me straight on the second contract, which was good. I've had no issue with the way they deal with anything. And I haven't had anything to do with the brass per se, like your Hunters or your Danas outside of the Contender Series stuff. But below them, the people that we deal with, like the VPs of Australia Pacific and the day-to-day people, they are some of the most fantastic people in the world. Like, they look after you so unbelievably well, and you get treated like an elite VIP athlete. So I've got no complaints.
All right, and your division, the featherweight division, Topuria versus Holloway. It's like, do you feel like that's one of the biggest fights of the year coming up?
Yeah, that's huge, and I love that fight. It's so exciting, isn't it? Like, Topuria, big puncher, like takes people out. Holloway can take a hit, but also just throws this huge volume. It's going to be so interesting because Ilia is used to waiting and he lets the fight come to him. It's one of the things I actually admire about the way he goes about his business. He sits and he waits and he waits, and then he throws his big shots, but he never looks rushed. He never looks like he's running out of time. But I don't know if you're going to be able to do that against Max. Like, Max just won't respect your power enough. He's just going to come at you and go and go and go and go. So, interesting fight. Can't wait to watch it.
Is that a coin flip for you, or do you feel like one is favored more than the other?
I'd probably have to say Max. Yeah, if I was a bookie, I'd have it at 55-45 Max.
All right. Well, you know about that, right? A little bit. You know about the.
Wait till I'm allowed to bet on the UFC, bro. Once I retire, I'm gonna absolutely smack it.
That's what a lot of fighters are saying, man. August 17th, only a few days away. UFC 305 Perth. Jack, thank you so much, man, for taking the time. I know this camp has been hectic, and you coming back, so appreciate it, and all the best coming up.
Nah, thanks, bro. Appreciate it.